Information shared on the following program is for general information purposes only. It does not constitute legal, tax, investment, or other advice, nor is it intended to recommend any particular investments, products, or financial instruments. Always seek advice from your financial advisor, attorney, or accountant with regard to investment, legal, or tax questions.
Hey, Mary Beth, what's going on today?
I just found out that scientists discovered the oldest living animal and then killed it.
Man, I cannot wait for lunch. I am starving.
Did you know that it would only take $40 billion to end world hunger? Yet people are still starving to death.
Talking about Debbie Downer.
Welcome to the only show in the country dedicated to helping savers worry less about money, the Worry-Free Retirement, with your host, nationally recognized retirement specialist and six-time author and fiduciary, Tony Walker.
Turn on your television, flip the channel to any news broadcast, Google the internet, or listen to those nightly cable news shows, and before long, you'll be overwhelmed with the struggles of your local city, the economy, and yes, even a global pandemic that resulted in more gloom and doom news than one could stand. Yes, the list of what we call Debbie Downers appears to go on, and it gets even worse whenever we receive good news and then get our hopes up. For instance, less than 12 months ago, many a saver was feeling really good about the prospect of retirement as they watched the stock market and the value of their 401k plans go gangbusters. When, out of the blue, and apparently for a multitude of reasons that even baffled the so-called experts, Debbie Downer shows up with more bad news as you watch your life savings plummet in value just about the time when you're thinking of retiring. So what do? Well, you contact your financial advisor or call the toll-free number with the stranger handling your 401k, only to hear more Debbie Downer news like you gotta ride it out, or the tried and true answer during down markets, just hang in there. Yes, the Debbie Downers of the world are more prevalent than ever before, which is why today we're going to take some of that Debbie Downerism on by showing you why we at Tony Walker Financial are able to take the bad news and turn it into good news with actual solutions for our saver clients. That's right, real game plans that in most cases allow our clients to better use, enjoy, and protect more of their money, yes, from the Debbie Downers of the world. And to help us here today in our studios, right here in Louisville, Kentucky, is my favorite son-in-law, fellow fiduciary, Mr. Non-Debbie Downer himself, Mr. Trey Juergens. Good morning, Trey.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
You are so welcome. And I've been excited about this show because generally, as most people might know, I write all the script, do kind of all the direction. Of course, we got our three wonderful producers in here, but I said, Trey, I want you to kind of tackle something and try to come up with some questions or things that you all see from a back office standpoint. Obviously, I'm seeing a lot of the people working with them, but you all do a lot of the legwork in behind of things that we see that the financial world creates these Debbie Downer moments.
Right. So on the onboarding process, a lot of the time, especially here in the Louisville office, when you bring someone back to me, my job is to kind of help them get all of the applications, all the transfer forms, kind of dive in and get the money moved where it needs to go. That does spark a lot of questions because whenever anybody's moving over their life savings, they start to have a little speculation in what they're doing. So not necessarily that any of our prospective clients are Debbie Downers, but sometimes the financial world has kind of pre-programmed that in their mind.
Yeah, I wonder why that is, though. I wonder why it is that the financial world, they seem more excited to get their money from the clients, and that's fine, nothing wrong with that. But then when you go to get your money back, why it's such these hoops to jump through. And some of our clients, I can't even imagine if they didn't have help. I would assume they'd just give up on the whole process.
Yeah, well, the financial world runs, as you always say, on OPM, other people's money. As soon as the financial world gets that money, they act like it's their own. They're not as excited to give it back to the savers. So in this process, I think that's where people are a little leery as they've dealt with the 800 numbers, the big companies that just don't have time for them. So they're a little leery when they're making changes to just hand this money over.
I've got to tell you a funny story, and we'll get to some of these questions that you came up with or concerns that happened. This has been a couple of years now. A gentleman that worked with a large company here in Louisville, he was getting ready to retire. The 401k was with another big institution. He had met with me once, a couple of times, and he said, well, I want to go to the big institution because they said they can roll over the 401k to an IRA as well. And I said, hey, that's your money, whatever you want to do. So apparently he talked to one advisor, then went in to see another one. They didn't return his call. He came back to me again. So we'd had a total of 5 appointments as he was looking over our game plans and everything. And he finally decided to do business with us. Well, what was funny, he said that he had gone to the other advisor he was approaching and said, I think I'm going to go on and work with Tony Walker Financial. And she said, that's the craziest thing I've ever heard of. I'll call him Jim. She said, Jim, we're the biggest company in the world. And it's funny, he had this response, Trey. I thought this was ingenious. He said, and I think that's your problem. I can't get return phone calls. This guy, Tony Walker Financial, sees me at any time. I want to work with somebody I can see locally and that'll return my calls and take care of things. And I just thought that was the greatest compliment in the world.
I'd say so.
Yeah.
That's exactly right.
Okay, so let's get right into it. What's your first question or concern or things you hear about that are we would call Debbie Downers?
Well, let's go to Debbie Downer.
All right.
Why in the world would I roll over my 401k to you guys, charging fees when I can just leave it where it's at, where fees are less?
So that's a question we hear often. That a lot of folks, especially when they're calling their 401k custodian, what they're telling them is that there are no fees or the expense ratios are very, very low, which is true. However, within a 401k, you're very limited to the options that you can invest in, and that's why the fees are able to be low. When these huge 401k companies, the custodians have millions, trillions of dollars, they can charge very minuscule fees because they have so much money. But when you roll it over to a managed account or to an advisor that may make fees and or commissions, what you're really looking to make sure you get in return is a plan. Mm-hmm. So yes, you could save money by keeping it in that 401k. In most instances, you definitely will. But if you roll it over and you're getting charged fees and you don't have a plan, that's a problem.
Yeah, you're right. That doesn't even make sense when you think about it. I mean, if you're going to just roll it over to somebody and they're going to charge 1.5%, 2%, but no game plan, you might as well just leave it at the 401k, which is why we have our proprietary software in this game plan. And I think when people really see this and understand the value of the game plan, it's like, especially for the fees we charge, I mean, 0.8% to do all this work and all the planning work, I think it's a heck of a bargain. So yeah, we would encourage people, if you've still got money in a 401k, give us an opportunity to roll that out. I think you're going to see that it's going to be orchestrated, navigated well, we manage it, and the fees are very, very reasonable to do so. All right, Debbie Downer, point number 2.
Okay, here we go.
I've always heard that with annuities, when you die, your family is left with nothing.
So this question is mostly asked in response to annuities. There's a lot of misconceptions. You've even written about these misconceptions for 15 plus years. The old annuities were treated similar to pensions. So an immediate annuity, you hand over this large lump sum of premium or money that in return, the insurance company pays you lifetime income until you're dead. Mm-hmm. When you die, even if that was just a couple years after taking that out, that money was gone. And that is a product that we very, very rarely use anymore. What we typically help savers find is the right annuity for their situation. Any annuity outside of a written game plan is not a good product. So what we've looked to do is ensure that the product we're selecting, in most cases, has what's called a contract value that would be left to a named beneficiary or beneficiaries that the owner would name. And we help them in that process. We make sure that the entire game plan beneficiaries are listed, so who you want to get it, gets it.
Got to take a break in a minute. One more question I got. We've got a bunch of them. Go ahead, one more.
Okay, back to Debbie Downer.
You guys say we should only assume 2 to 3% on my money? Good luck keeping up with inflation.
Yeah, so this one's in response to when we present our game plans, the proprietary software that we're showing here on the screen. When we use assumptions of 2 and 3% over time, some of these money managers out there promising 8 to 12% annual returns on brokerage accounts are probably dazzling some clients into going away from our plans. However, why we use those is, as I tell clients, we'd like to have a very positive conversation in 10 years when we've possibly outperformed these realistic assumptions versus a very awkward conversation that some of these money managers that are telling them hang in there the Debbie Downers of the world are going to be pretty upset when they were promised 8 to 10% and they've only been getting 3 or 4, versus if we show them 0 to 3 and we've been able to outperform that. It's a much better example of showing you how to use and enjoy your money without the fear of running out.
Yeah, and I like to say, Trey, over the years, I like Will Rogers saying, always expect the worst and you'll never be disappointed. I think when we do that, especially right now as we record this show in October of 2022, the market's down. And what I would say is, okay, those same money managers that were saying you could get an average return of 10 and 12%, you factor in negative 20%, plus if you're retired taking withdrawals, I mean, that's a disaster. So yeah, we like to be very conservative in our assumptions. If we make more than that, great. But what we would like to prove to people is you don't have to take all this risk in most cases. Let's be conservative. Let's get a game plan so you can see how to spend the money, and then you're going to sleep better at night. All right, let's take a quick break. You ready? We'll be right back. Stay tuned, folks. We'll be back with more of your questions. Have you recently retired, been laid off, or offered a pension buyout? Has the company you work for moved, been acquired, or closed its doors forever? And finally, do you have a 401k with a previous employer you'd like to move to safer territory? Then take advantage of this opportunity to move your 401k or lump sum pension to Tony Walker Financial. Let's meet in person to discuss your retirement options. Log on now to TonyWalkerFinancial.com to schedule your free, no obligation appointment. Let us help you today. Well, in case you're just now joining us, this is our Debbie Downer episode. Some really good stuff. I put my favorite son-in-law and fellow fiduciary Trey Juergens in charge of these questions and common things that come up in conversation when people are moving money over, which leads to the last Debbie Downer. Well, a lot of times, let's set the stage. I may be meeting with them. They've decided to roll over their 401k. I've addressed how that's going to work, but then they come back to the onboarding. And I've got to believe a lot of them kind of are like Debbie Downer. Well, I bet y'all are going to make a ton of money, or gosh, I bet it's going to be a lot of taxes to roll this thing over. So explain to people what happens when they roll over, how much we get paid on the front end, and how if it's done properly, there are absolutely no taxes to move those 401k plans over.
Right. So the beauty of 401ks and IRAs, if it's transferred, rolled over, there is no out-of-pocket cost to move funds over into our process. So whether it's being transferred or rolled into Charles Schwab, transferred or rolled into an annuity, there's no out-of-pocket cost. We do all of that for free. There are taxes associated only when funds are distributed directly to you, the
so as
saver.
long as it goes from their custodian to ours, no taxes, right?
No cost, no taxes. Any commissions paid on insurance products like life insurance, annuities, are actually paid directly by the company. That does not come out of the premium going into those products. And the only fees charged on our Charles Schwab platform are deducted quarterly in arrears. So at the end of the quarter, whatever is in there, 0.2% would be deducted for management fees. So all the work that goes into onboarding someone into our process, there is zero out-of-pocket cost for any of the planning.
But let's break this down real simple. Let's say somebody has a $500,000 401k. They roll it over to our split IRA, and let's say we put $350,000 in annuities and $150,000 in Schwab. Again, as long as it's done properly, no taxes, obviously. The $350,000 in annuities, they would pay us a commission, right? So no out of pocket there. And then the $150,000 with Schwab, let's say it rolled over in November, we're not even going to value that account until the end of December for that quarter and every quarter thereafter and deduct their fees. So to me, I always tell people, you're not writing checks to Tony Walker Financial. Folks, you'll never write a check to Tony Walker Financial. It's going to go to the custodians that handle the money. It's either going to be a commission or fee. I think it's a win-win for everybody. And then what I like about that, Trey, is, again, they've got all of the work that we're providing, whether it's tax withholdings, recommendations on investments, no additional charges for any of those services.
Right. There's not a service cost at all for any of that. The onboarding process, all of this movement of money that really does scare the saver out there, it's done by our staff and done with a smile.
And they're good at it too, really good at it. So, all right, I think you've got, in the essence of time, I think we got one more. Let's talk about this one.
Back to Debbie Downer for the last one.
I can't believe you guys would ever suggest that a saver spends any of their principal in retirement. That makes no sense.
Let me take this real quick. The late, great John Bogle said this, and I think it's a wonderful quote. He said, this moving into the 21st century, and of course he's deceased now, but he said this is probably the first time in history that people are going to have to probably use their principal. Folks, gone are the days where you can run down to the local bank, get 6 or 7%, you invest your $500,000, they pay you $35,000 a year, you die, and the $500,000 goes to the kids. That ain't going to happen anymore with risk, with inflation. So what would you say to that if somebody says, what do you mean I got to use my principal? How would you respond to that?
Typically say, enter the split IRA. What we're able to do with our process and this split IRA concept is we can show savers, also by supplementing Social Security, maybe an employer pension, some of these different things, by working these assets into a game plan and showing them a lifelong income stream where they're not going to run out of money. We can't promise that they're always going to have as much money as they'd love to have, but we can guarantee they won't run out of it. Mm-hmm. And with very realistic assumptions on the front end, deploy as much of their assets as they need in retirement.
You know, Live While Die Broke is really emulating what my granddad did. I mean, the idea, folks, that you're going to be able to not use principal, it doesn't even make any sense. Why wouldn't you want to use and enjoy this money during your lifetime, just like my granddad did? And yeah, okay, you pass away, there's not as much money left, but wouldn't you rather use and enjoy it now? And if you've got something in place like these guaranteed annuities that can make sure you don't run out of money, I mean, I don't know why you wouldn't want to do that. So folks, all we're doing is emulating granddad's retirement, and it's very, very worry-free the way we do it. Well, Trey, we're about out of time. I really appreciate all the work you're doing, all the staff. We're going to try to have more and more of the staff on because I want people to understand there's a lot more at Tony Walker Financial than just Tony Walker. We've got a great staff, people like yourself, salaried fiduciaries that are here to work in the client's best interest. So thank you very much for being on.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
You're welcome. Whether you're a long-time viewer of the Worry-Free Retirement or just catching it for the first time, know this, you can watch past episodes and educational clips by visiting our YouTube channel. Just log on to youtube.com and search Tony Walker Financial.
Have yourself a merry little Christmas.
Worry-Free Music presents the greatest collection of Christmas covers ever assembled.
It's beginning to look a lot like Christmas. Hey!
Tony Walker's A Humdinger Christmas. 486 timeless classics across 6 digitally remastered 8-track tapes.
Happy holidays!
Every song fills your home with holiday magic.
Sing ding-a-ding, ring ding-a-ding, ding ding-a-ding, dong ding-a-ding, ring ding-a-ding, ding ding-a-ding, ring ding-a-ding, ring ding-a-ding.
Don't miss this opportunity to receive Tony Walker's A Humdinger Christmas, the perfect way to celebrate the joy of this holiday season.
Dashing through the snow, hey, and 1-horse open sleigh, yeah.
Only $685 plus $3 shipping and handling. Order yours today.
8-track tape player not included. Offer void where prohibited.
And from all of us at Tony Walker Financial, have a Merry Christmas.
Welcome back to the Worry-Free Retirement. I am Tony Walker along with fellow fiduciary, my favorite son-in-law, Trey Juergens. Trey, I'm actually enjoying this. This was a great idea, the Debbie Downer series. I love it.
As an optimistic guy, we had to throw some Debbie Downerisms in there.
Yeah, you know, I always think about that. I think I'm a very optimistic person, but I'm also a realist, but I'm definitely not a pessimist. I don't think you're a pessimist, are you?
Far from.
But the Debbie Downer is really that whole pessimistic outlook, or as we record this show in October of 2022, as we're watching this market go down, it's kind of interesting that the Debbie Downers of the world are trying to be optimistic, especially with the stock market down, and they're only one-liner. Unfortunately, I used to say the same thing 20 years ago when I was heavily in the market, is hang in there. That's real optimistic, isn't it?
Right.
Okay, so we've got another Debbie. We're going to try to get 3 more here in our time remaining, folks. These are Debbie Downer comments or responses to what we ought to be doing over here at Tony Walker Financial. So, Trey, you got another Debbie Downer for us?
Yep, here we go.
All this risk in the stock market and flashy annuity products sounds like the smartest thing to do is invest my 401k in gold.
That is interesting, Trey. In fact, I had nearly 20 appointments yesterday in our Louisville offices, and 2 different people, that was their main question. Should I be in gold? And you know my response? Should you? I don't know.
Exactly.
So why don't you address that? Because I know you talk to a lot of people too, but what are your thoughts on this idea of why in the world, with inflation and stock market decreases and blah, 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 why wouldn't we just invest in a bunch of gold?
Yeah, that is a daily question we've been getting, whether it's phone calls coming in from current clients, prospective clients. The problem is it's clunky. It's hard to invest in gold, and although the market's down, typically people flock towards these precious metals, but unfortunately gold today, October 11th, is down nearly 5% year to date. So also, if it's qualified money, meaning 401k, IRA, something like that, it's very hard to put that money into precious metals. Some people do look at EFTs and things that revolve around gold or silver, precious metals, but that gets even dicier when you look at the holdings within those EFTs. Some of them have mining operations. Some of them have these companies halfway across the world you've never heard of, and throwing that money is very speculative if you're trying to actually purchase precious metals.
And I think that's the key word, Trey, is speculative. We just are not in the business of speculating with money, folks. So certainly if you want to put a little bit of money in gold, or think, okay, let's say this whole economy collapses, what are you going to do? Do you take a nugget of gold down to Kroger and kind of slice it off and trade it in for brick? I don't know. But anyway, but again, not to try to talk anybody out of gold or silver, but that's just not something we offer here at Tony Walker Financial. Good point, though. All right, let's keep moving here. What's our next Debbie Downer question or comment?
Head over to Debbie Downer.
Wait longer than age 62 to take Social Security? Why would I ever do that?
Okay, now let me kind of dive in here, because you get this question, I get this question. It's kind of interesting. To me, this is really imperative to think about the person's situation. Are they single? Do they have a long life expectancy? Would there be a huge drop-off if a person died and wanted to make sure that the surviving spouse had a larger Social Security benefit? Taxes fall into this. I mean, gosh, the list goes on, Trey, of planning opportunities as to why you might want to take it early and why you might want to delay it. There really is no one-size-fits-all. I mean, what do you tend to sense or hear from some of the folks you meet with?
I have a perfect answer that I've crafted over 5+ years about this when anybody asks about Social Security, and that answer is, it depends. Mm-hmm. What we've gone through is, it's in most cases really a life insurance decision. If you have the funds and finances to be able to delay Social Security, in most cases, if your Social Security is going to be higher than your spouse's, to be able to leave more survivor death benefit for Social Security benefit, that's really the big decision that goes into it. However, there's more factors. How much do you believe that benefit's going to be there down the road? What other assets do you have to be able to delay Social Security? And then the biggest is just, are you ready for that additional income? If you're working, you're 62, if you're still working, you probably don't want to start that, because if you throw that income on top of what you're already making, there's penalties and all kinds of things that go into it.
Yeah, in fact, there's different takes on this. I'm just reading an article that literally just came out in Wealth Planning today, October 10th, 2022, by Suzanne Woolley. But basically, here's the headline: Slumping stocks and inflation slam retirement portfolios. And then the subtitle, though, is this one: With markets sinking, it's important to think carefully about where you draw money from and when you claim Social Security benefits. So this person's argument, if you will, for lack of a better word, is that, in these times, yeah, that's probably the best thing you can do is delay that Social Security. So I was reading why, and okay, yeah, there's some pros and cons to that, but my concern is, again, just like most things that are written, people will look at that and go, oh, I guess I should delay Social Security. Yeah, that's, it's just, again, it's that one-size-fits-all response.
Right. The big number that everybody always kind of flocks to is that 8%. 8% interest increase every year from full retirement age to age 70. If you can afford to hang on, it's hard to guarantee 8% anywhere right now.
That's right. But like you said, I think the issue then becomes, as we always kid around, if we knew we were going to die, this stuff would be easy to plan. So, yeah, you delay the Social Security. Another argument would be, yeah, but what if you died at age 75? You didn't start till 70. Maybe, you were single the whole time, that's not a lot of benefits. I mean, 5 years worth of that, and that's all you get. So that's a toughie too. And the other thing, you mentioned this earlier, you alluded to this, the Social Security Trust Fund, I think now they gave it one more year. I don't think it's supposed to go belly up till 2034. But I think a lot of our clients are savers. Some of them in manufacturing, middle income, they're skeptical of the government, skeptical of the system. So a lot of them just say, hey, as long as I'm not working full time, I don't exceed the 19,600 threshold or whatever, for pre-retirement under the, most people are retiring at 67 for full retirement. But I think I want to take it. They just don't have a lot of trust in that being there. So that could be a reason. That might be you. You might be sitting there saying, Tony, I think I'm just going to take it early. I don't care what the math says. I'm just worried about the darn government maybe not being there for me. So who knows? But again, that's why, folks, before you make decisions on any of this, hopefully thank goodness we have the capability to help you think through this, but hopefully you're talking to a retirement planning specialist that deals in this stuff all the time. That's all we do at Tony Walker Financial is retirement planning. And depending on where you are in that stage of life and thinking about retirement, if you have not yet drawn Social Security, we'd be happy to help you think through that as well. All right, I think we probably only have time for one more Debbie Downer, and we kind of saved the best for last. This is kind of a fun one. I just peeked at your notes there. Go ahead, let's hear it.
Life insurance and retirement? That sounds like a total waste of money.
Well, it's funny. I had a gentleman in yesterday. He's eligible for a pension. The pension can only be taken out as an installment. And you know what that means, Trey, but let's just make sure everybody understands. If you have a pension installment, you've got to elect whether you want the survivor to get any of that installment when you die. Obviously, if you say, yeah, let's say I want my spouse to get some money when I die, well, it's back to what you said earlier. Really, that's a life insurance decision. Because if you say, let's say the person's going to draw $3,000 a month, but he's worried about dying, he wants his wife to get something. If he includes her in on the gig, when he dies, the company's only going to pay him, let's say, $2,600 a month, not $3,000 a month. I'm making up numbers now. So what that means is he's going to forfeit $400 per month in order to protect his wife so that she can get $2,600. Correct?
Correct.
Am I making sense? Okay. So really what you're doing, in that example, you're buying a life insurance policy. It's not called that, but you really are because you're forfeiting $400 a month you could have. And I know you've seen my granddad's pension. I think it was around $700 or so from Bell South. If he died first, Hazel was going to get half of that, so he got less money. Unfortunately, Hazel died first. So if he died first, Hazel had gotten something, but since she died first, he got less for the rest of his life. Right. So in other words, he was paying for a, quote, life insurance benefit and never got any benefit, nor did anybody else, because when he died, it all ended. So you work in our life insurance department. As we close out, tell us how we use life insurance, or at least consider life insurance in the retirement planning process.
Yeah, in choosing life insurance, again, it obviously has to do with the particular situation, but we try to position life insurance as something that is not a waste of money. Of course, what you're in it for is that tax-free death benefit. So if we can use a policy that will not have issues with not enough premium going into the policy.
Something that's guaranteed to not lapse.
Correct. Yeah. So we don't want anything to lapse. Of course, term has its place, but in retirement, we're looking for that death benefit. So we know we want to have something permanent. We also have some products that have long-term care benefits. So you can actually use that death benefit to pay for long-term care needs while you're still living. So in a lot of cases, we do suggest life insurance in retirement, but not anything that's going to be a waste of money.
Well said. So folks, if you've been listening to this episode of the Debbie Downer, by the way, if you ever want to go back and listen to past radio shows of the Worry-Free Retirement, you just go to soundcloud.com. Click on that little Tony Walker bobblehead. And also, by the way, we have a television show. You can go to our YouTube channel at Tony Walker Financial and watch past episodes of the Worry-Free Retirement TV show. But regardless of your station in life, if you're retired, nearing retirement, have money languishing in the bank, maybe you just received an inheritance, need help with your 401k, or want to look at some safer alternatives, just let us know at TonyWalkerFinancial.com. That's TonyWalkerFinancial.com, or you can call us anytime at 270-843-9380. That's 270-843-9380. Well, from Tony Walker Financial and the Worry-Free Retirement, we've enjoyed being with you, but until next week, until then, you remember to always be worry-free. Make it a good one.